In class, you were asked this question: why is it important to know how to add outside of math class? And I'm going to discuss just a few of them, because we're not always going to have a calculator in our pocket or smartphone or whatever device we have. So sometimes we have to resort to the old-fashioned way of adding on pencil and paper. Some examples might be anytime you're dealing with money. If you went to the store and you wanted a CD that cost $14.99 and you wanted a candy bar that was 79 cents, you wanted to make sure you had enough money, so you add those two together. You may be asked in science class to tell the links of two objects, and you have to add those together. So you use it in science class as well. An example, like I just said, was adding links together. Maybe your parents are trying to figure out how far a trip is going to be and they want a halfway point, or they want to stop, and so they're adding some distances together. They may say, okay, well, from here to, if you're going to Disney World, from here to Mississippi is so many miles, and then from Mississippi to Orlando is another whatever miles, and they add those two together. You might be looking at charts and tables to decide how many hours a group of employees worked in a day. So you can add time together. And you may have come up with totally different ways than I have. I'm just trying to give you some examples of how addition is part of our everyday life. Okay, so that's just a few. Add to it however you want to. Steps for adding whole numbers. The first step is to line up your numbers by the place value. Then you're going to start with the ones place, and add going to the left. And then you might have to regroup if necessary. Okay, so those are your steps for just adding whole numbers. We're going to do some examples together now. And I want you to pause the video when you practice adding these, and then you can unpause me to see if you got the correct one. So your examples are going to go on your student side. The notes I just gave you would be on your teacher side. Okay, let's do this word problem together. There are 44,281 farms in Florida and 38,360 farms in New York. How many farms are in Florida and New York altogether? The first thing I did was line up my place value for each number. I have my ones place, my tens place, my hundreds place, my thousands place, and my 10,000s place. Okay? So I want you to practice this on your student side. Go ahead and pause me and see if you're going to get the same sum that I get. Okay, so after you've lined these up, you're going to start in the ones place and start adding going to the left. So we're going to be going to the left when we add. 1 plus 0 is 1. 8 and 6, well, I know 8 plus 2 is 10. 4 more would make 14. Here I am regrouping. I regrouped a group of 10s. 3 and 2 is 5. 1 more is 6. I'm going to put my comma down to separate my periods. 8 plus 2 is 10. 2 more would make 12. Regroup. 4 plus 3 is 7. Plus 1 more is 8. So 82,641 farms in New York. And okay, let's try another word problem together. About 66,150,000 households in the U.S. have cats. About 58,200,000 households have dogs. About how many households have a cat or dog? So we're going to add those together. Go ahead and pause me and try to go through the steps and add this, do this problem and get the sum. Okay, so we're starting with our ones place and adding to the left. This is easy because we have a whole bunch of zeros. We can just drop down. So 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 1 is 3. Once again, I'm using my number sense. 8 and 2 is 10. 4 more would make 14. 5 and 5 is 10. Plus 2 more would be 12. So there are 124,350,000 households that have dogs and cats in the United States. So those are just some examples with whole numbers which you have done in your previous grades. Now we are going to switch into the steps for adding decimals. Just like with whole numbers, we are going to line up our numbers based on place value, and one of the big places to look is to make sure that you line up your decimal points. So when you're writing the numbers, you want to make sure you line up the decimal point. And then you're going to drop down your decimal and forget about it. And the reason I say forget about it is because you want to add as if there were no decimals involved. You're going to add like normal. You're going to start with your very right side place and you're going to add to the left just like normal, okay? And we're going to do some examples so that you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. Let's say I am adding the decimals 1 300ths plus 3600ths. So step 1 said to line up my decimal points. So I'm going to take that 1 300ths and be very careful to line up my decimal places, my decimal points. Then step 2 says to drop down your decimal and forget about it. So we're not going to even worry about this decimal anymore. So it's kind of like I'm going to think about adding 103 plus 36. This is what I'm going to be thinking, because I'm going to ignore that the decimal even occurs, okay? For right now anyways. So we're adding these. So go ahead and try to add these. Push pause, and then you can check it. Okay. So 6 and 3 is 9. 3 and 0 is 3. 1 and 0 is 1. So my sum is 1 3900ths. Over here, if I had just added whole numbers, I would have got 139. But that decimal was important because it was a matter of 139 whole numbers versus one whole number. So dropping down your decimal, if you just drop it, okay, and forget about it, you're going to get the correct answer. Okay, let's try another example. What if I had 356 2/10 plus 12 4500ths? Step 1, line up my decimal points. Now, in order to be successful when we talk about subtraction, we're going to practice something with addition. We're always going to put zeros in to hold the place to make it that much easier to add, and it's going to save you a lot of headaches when you subtract. So I put that 0 in even though it wasn't here in my original number. So I want you to drop down your decimal. You're done with it? And add like normal. So go ahead and pause. Okay, so you should have added your hundredths, which is 5, your tenths, which is 6, your ones, which is 8, your tens, which is 6, and your hundredths, which is 3. So your sum is 368 and 6500ths. Now let's try one where we're going to have to do some regrouping. 17 and 49 hundredths plus 9 and 8 tenths. Step 1, line up your decimals. Okay, remember we're going to use the 0 just to hold place because it's going to save us a lot of heartache in subtraction. Then we drop down our decimal, okay, and add like normal. So I want you to push pause. Okay, 9 and 0 in my hundredths place is 9. 8 and 4, I remember that 8 plus 2 is 10. Add 2 more is 12. Going to regroup just like normal. There's nothing special I do here. 9 and 1 more is 10, plus 7 is 17. Regroup. So my sum is 27 and 29 hundredths. We are going to practice something that you're going to see sometime with decimals. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this so I have some room. Still trying to do this on your student side. You want to make sure you don't write so big that you can't have room to do all these examples. What if I'm adding, say I have $2.10 and Mom gives me $5. When I'm adding, I need to line up the decimal, but I don't see any decimals here. All whole numbers have imaginary decimals at the end, because another way to write $5 is $5, correct? So always think of all whole numbers having an imaginary decimal. So here we could say $2.10 plus $5. Go ahead and put my zeros in. That way I don't, what happens is sometimes you guys will do $2.10 and just put your 5 right here. And you're going to get a totally different answer than when you do it the correct way. You have 10 cents and 0 cents, that's 10 cents. $5 and $2 is $7, so you have $7.10. If you had added like this, you would have said that you had $2.15, which wouldn't even be reasonable if Mom had given you a $5 bill. How in the world could you only have $2, right? Let's do another example where that happens. If we had 7 and 21 hundredths plus 11. Let's say this is time we're talking about. Maybe it's race. Maybe this is someone's results in a race. 7 and 21 hundredths of a second and 11 seconds. So I'm going to line up my decimals. And what did I tell you all whole numbers have? An imaginary decimal behind them. So that's going to ensure that I do my decimal points in the correct spot instead of doing it wrong and adding like that. That is not the right way, just like this is not the right way. So with that, I can add in my imaginary zeros, or my placeholder zeros actually, and ensure that I add this correctly. So go ahead and pause, but first drop down your decimal. 1 and 0 is 1, 2 and 0 is 2, so I have 21 hundredths. 11 plus 7 is 18, so total time for those two races, let's say that's what it was 18 and 21 hundredths of a second.